Fleet Commander Thrax of the Catharn. Dominion stared at the holographic display with the expression his species, reserved for mild inconvenience. The swirling blue projection showed a region of space his people had claimed 3 centuries earlier, a sector they had pacified, catalogued, and largely forgotten. Now, according to the report scrolling across his auxiliary screen, something had disturbed the peace. "Explain this again," he said, his voice carrying the flat, precise tones of a being who had never needed to repeat himself. The subordinate officer, a younger Catharn with the telltale iridescent scales of the frontier-born, touched his forehead in deference. "Commander, a vessel of unknown origin was detected passing through the Veil Nebula." It ignored all standard beacon warnings and continued into the contested region beyond. Thrax's mandibles clicked once in quiet irritation. The contested region, a term his government used to describe worlds they had not yet fully subjugated, worlds that, by every measure of Catharn law, already belonged to the Empire. "What species?" "Unknown, Commander. The ship's configuration matches no known design from any of the subject races. We believe it may be a new species entering the galactic stage." Believe, Thrax despised that word. It implied uncertainty, and uncertainty was the mother of failure. He had risen through 73 campaigns by eliminating uncertainty from his operations. Every battle he fought was calculated, predicted, and executed with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The Catharn Empire had not grown to encompass 1,000 worlds through luck or generosity. They had grown through the systematic application of overwhelming force. And now this, a new species, Thrax repeated, tasting the words. "And what did this new species do when our patrol vessel hailed them?" The subordinate officer's scales flickered with discomfort. "They did not respond, Commander. They continued on their trajectory. The patrol vessel fired a warning shot across their bow. They returned fire." Thrax felt something he rarely experienced: genuine surprise. In his 400 years of service, he had encountered 17 new species. Every single one had either surrendered immediately upon seeing the might of the Cathar military, or had attempted to flee. None had fired back. None had been foolish enough to escalate. He pulled up the combat data from the patrol vessel. The images showed a ship that appeared almost primitive, angular construction, visible thruster arrays, no obvious energy shielding. The kind of vessel a species built before they learned how to harness the deeper mysteries of the universe. The kind of vessel that would be crushed by a single volley from a proper warship. But the patrol vessel had not crushed it. The patrol vessel had taken damage. Significant damage. "What kind of weapons are these?" Thrax asked, pointing at the damage patterns on the holographic reconstruction. "Kinetic, Commander. Mass drivers. Projectile weapons accelerated to significant fractions of light speed." Thrax's compound eyes narrowed. "Kinetic weapons." The kind of weapons his ancestors had used before they discovered energy-based technologies. The kind of weapons that were supposed to be useless against modern shielding. And yet the damage reports told a different story. The patrol vessel's forward shielding had collapsed after 3 impacts. The 4th had breached the hull. The 5th had destroyed the primary weapons array. "Send a cruiser," Thrax said. The Vindicator, have them intercept this vessel and deliver a message. What message, Commander? Thrax turned to face the subordinate, his posture radiating the cold authority of a being who had ordered the extinction of 3 species and felt nothing but satisfaction at the efficiency of the operations. Tell them that the Cathan Empire does not tolerate aggression. They will surrender their vessel and submit to inspection. If they refuse, the cruiser will demonstrate the consequences of defiance. Aboard the human vessel Odyssey, Captain Mara Vance watched the tactical display with the focus of a woman who had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. The ship hummed around her, familiar vibration of the fusion reactors a constant comfort. Her crew moved through their stations with practiced efficiency, each person understanding their role in the complex dance of starship operation. Captain, the alien vessel is maintaining course. They'll be in weapons range in 12 minutes. Vance nodded, her eyes never leaving the display. The ship that pursued them was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Odyssey. Its configuration suggested heavy armor and significant weapons capability. And GT snorts. And GT, the kind of ship designed to intimidate. The first ship we encountered, Vance said, her voice calm despite the tension coiling in her chest. They were armed, but not heavily, like a patrol vessel. This one is different. Lieutenant Derek Wu, her tactical officer, looked up from his console. This is a warship, Captain. The energy readings are consistent with military-grade technology, which means they're taking us seriously. Yes, ma'am, which also means they're probably going to demand surrender. Vance allowed herself a small smile. Let them. The communication system crackled to life and a voice filled the bridge. A voice that was not quite organic, translated by the universal language protocols that humanity had developed during the first contact with the Zaloni. It carried the flat, authoritative tone of a being accustomed to obedience. Human vessel, you have entered Cathan sovereign territory. You have fired upon a Cathan patrol vessel. These actions constitute acts of war. You will power down your weapons, prepare for boarding, and submit to inspection. Failure to comply will result in your immediate destruction. Vance looked around the bridge at her crew, young faces, determined faces, faces that had volunteered for this mission, knowing the risks. They had come into the unknown because humanity had decided that hiding in their solar system was no longer acceptable. They had come because the galaxy was vast and they refused to be afraid of it. This is Captain Mara Vance of the Terran vessel Odyssey, she said, her voice steady and clear. We have not entered your territory. We are in interstellar space. We fired in self-defense after your vessel fired upon us. We will not power down our weapons. We will not submit to inspection, and we will not surrender. The silence on the communications channel stretched for 3 seconds. Then the alien voice returned, and this time there was an edge to it, not quite anger, not quite surprise, but something between the two. Human, you have made a grave error. Probably, Vance replied, but not the one you think. Thrax received the transmission from the Vindicator with a growing sense of unease. The human vessel had refused to surrender. Worse, it had begun evasive maneuvers, positioning itself in a way that suggested it intended to fight. Commander, the Vindicator is requesting permission to engage. Thrax hesitated. He had never hesitated before, but something about this situation felt wrong. The humans had not run, they had not surrendered, they had fired back at a patrol vessel and killed 43 Cathan warriors, and now they were preparing to face a warship that outmaneuvered them 3-1. Permission granted, he said, but instruct the captain to capture the vessel if possible. I want to know what kind of species does not understand fear. The tactical display showed the Vindicator moving into firing position, its energy cannons charging. The human vessel made no attempt to flee. Instead, it turned to face the Cathan ship, its weapons hot and ready. Thrax watched the engagement begin. The Vindicator fired first, a full volley of energy beams that would have melted through the shields of any known species. The beam struck the human vessel, and something happened. The human ship did not have energy shields. Thrax had been right about that, but it had something else, some kind of reactive armor that absorbed the incoming energy and redistributed it across the hull. The beams did not penetrate. They splashed across the surface of the ship like water against stone. Impossible, Thrax breathed. The human vessel returned fire, kinetic projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds. The Vindicator's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were not optimized for mass drivers. First round punched through, the second blew a hole in the ship's hull, the third struck the engine compartment. Thrax watched as his Empire's warship began to list. He watched as the humans fired again and again, each shot landing with surgical precision. The Vindicator was not just damaged, it was being dismantled. He looked at the subordinate officer. The young Cathar scales had gone pale with shock. "Commander," the officer whispered, "what are we dealing with?" Thrax did not answer. He was too busy wondering how a species that should have been weak had just crippled a Cathar warship in 7 minutes. The Vindicator's captain, a scarred veteran named Rax, had never experienced defeat. In his 200 years of service, he had participated in 43 engagements. He had won 43 engagements. The concept of losing was theoretical to him, something that happened to other species, other commanders, other ships. Now, as his vessel shuddered around him, and the emergency klaxons filled the command deck with their shrill warning, Rax found himself confronting a reality that his mind refused to accept. Shields at 23%, his tactical officer reported, his voice strained. The kinetic impacts are causing structural stress fractures across the primary hull. We have atmosphere loss in sections 7 through 12. Rax gripped his command chair, his claws digging into the armrests. Return fire. All batteries, target their weapons array. The energy cannons fired again. Desperate full power volley. The beams lanced across the void and struck the human vessel with enough force to melt a small moon. The human vessel absorbed the impact. No, Rax breathed, that's not possible. No shield can absorb that much energy. It's not a shield, his tactical officer said, his voice carrying the note of discovery that came too late to matter. Their hull is composed of layers of reactive materials. The energy is being dispersed across the entire surface of the ship. They're using their armor as a heat sink. Rax had heard of such technology, but Only in theoretical papers, the energy required to make such a system work would be astronomical. The heat alone would cook the crew alive, and yet the human vessel continued to function, continued to fire, continued to hunt. Target their engines, Rax ordered. If we can't break their armor, we'll strand them here and call for reinforcements. The gunnery officer tried to comply. The energy cannons tracked the human vessel, their targeting systems struggling to keep up with the evasive maneuvers, but before they could fire, a new alarm screamed through the command deck. Kinetic impact detected, the tactical officer shouted, primary reactor. The primary reactor has been breached. Rax felt the deck lurch beneath him. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim glow of emergency systems. The command deck fell silent, the only sound the hiss of escaping atmosphere and the distant wail of alarms. He looked at his tactical display. The human vessel was still there, still intact, still hunting. Status, he demanded. Reactor is offline. We have backup power for life support and communications, but weapons and shields are gone. Send a distress signal to the fleet. Tell them we've encountered new species. Tell them they're not primitive. The tactical officer nodded, his hands moving across the console, but the human vessel had already anticipated the move. A kinetic round struck the communications array, and the signal died before it could be transmitted. Rax closed his eyes for the first time. In his long career, he knew what it felt like to lose. Aboard the Odyssey, Captain Vance watched the Cathan warship drift helplessly. The battle had been shorter than she had expected. The alien vessel had fought well, but they had been surprised by human tactics, human technology, human determination. Captain, the enemy vessel is disabled. The reactor is offline and their weapon systems are non-functional. They're dead in the water. Vance nodded. Damage report. Lieutenant Wu consulted his console. We took 3 hits, 2 penetrated the outer armor layers but were stopped before breaching the inner hull. The 3rd struck the aft section, but the secondary armor held. Crew casualties are minimal, 6 injured, 2 serious. No fatalities. No fatalities. Vance allowed herself a moment of relief. Against a warship 3 times their size, with technology that should have been superior, they had emerged virtually unscathed. Status of the enemy crew, she asked. Life support is still functioning. They're alive, but they're trapped. Their main reactor is offline and their backup systems will only last for 12 hours before they start losing atmosphere. Vance considered the options. They could leave the alien vessel to die. They could finish the job with another volley. Or they could do something that would send a message. Open a channel, she said. The communications officer, a young woman named Zhang, looked up in surprise. Captain, we're going to talk to them. The channel opened and Vance spoke. Cathorn vessel, this is Captain Mara. Vance of the Terran vessel Odyssey. Your ship is disabled. Your weapons are offline. Your crew is trapped. We can leave you here to die. We can finish the job, or we can offer you terms. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. Then a voice responded, older, harsher than the one that had threatened them earlier. What terms? A ceasefire. You power down all remaining systems and submit to an inspection. In return, we'll help you restore your reactor and let you return To your territory with a message. What message? Vance leaned forward in her chair, her voice carrying the weight of everything. She wanted them to understand. Tell your empire that humanity does not want war, but we are not afraid of it. Tell them that we will defend ourselves against any aggression. Tell them that this was a warning. The alien captain was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was tired. Your terms are acceptable. Thrax received the message from the Vindicator 3 hours later, relayed through a series of communication buoys that the humans had not destroyed. The message was brief and devastating. Vindicator disabled, human vessel intact, crew rescued, humans request negotiations. He read the message 3 times, hoping that some detail had been mistranscribed. But no, the words remained the same. His warship had been defeated, his crew had been captured and returned, and the humans had done it with a ship a third of the size of his own. What do we know about this species? He asked, his voice carrying an edge that his subordinates had learned to fear. The intelligence officer stepped forward. Commander, we have compiled what information we have. The humans call their home world Earth. They have been spacefaring for less than 3 centuries. Their technology appears primitive in many ways. No energy weapons, no shield technology, limited FTL capabilities. And yet they defeated a Kathan warship. Yes, Commander, the data is confusing. Their weapons are kinetic, which should have been ineffective against our shields, but they used them with such precision that they overwhelmed our defensive systems. Our analysis suggests they have a tactical philosophy that emphasizes localized overmatch. They concentrate their fire on specific areas rather than spreading it across the entire target. Thrax considered this. It was a strategy of desperation, the kind of strategy used by a species that could not afford to trade shots evenly, the kind of strategy used by a species that expected to lose. And yet they had won. Prepare my personal flagship, Thrax said. I will go to the border and demand an audience with these humans. I want to see them for myself. I want to understand what we're dealing with. The intelligence officer hesitated. Commander, the High Council has ordered caution. They believe we should gather more information before engaging further. The High Council is not on the front line. I am, and I will not be made fool of by a species that barely knows how to travel between stars. He turned away from the display, his mind already racing with possibilities. The humans were a puzzle, and puzzles were meant to be solved. He would find their weakness, he would exploit it, and then he would bring their world to its knees. But somewhere deep in the part of his consciousness that he never acknowledged, a small voice whispered a question he could not quite answer. What if they didn't have a weakness? The Odyssey hung in space like a patient predator, its systems humming with quiet power. 3 days had passed since the battle with the Vindicator, and Captain Vance had used every moment to prepare for what she knew was coming. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts, 4 vessels, heavy tonnage, military configuration. They're approaching at high speed. Vance looked at the tactical display. The incoming ships were larger than the Vindicator, much larger. Each one was easily 5 times the size of the Odyssey, their hulls bristling with weapons that seemed designed to project overwhelming force. Analysis, she ordered. Lieutenant Wu's fingers flew across his console. The lead vessel is significantly larger than the others. Command configuration, energy signatures suggest a heavily shielded and armored command vessel. The other three are configured for combat. They're deploying in a formation that maximizes their firing arcs while protecting the command vessel. They're learning, Vance observed. Someone noticed what we did to the Vindicator and decided to adjust their tactics. Looks that way, Captain. They're staying out of our optimal engagement range. They're trying to engage us from a distance where our kinetic weapons lose effectiveness. Vance nodded slowly. It was a sensible tactic. The Cathar had realized that their energy weapons were ineffective against human armor, so they were trying to force an engagement at longer ranges, where their weapons had less drop-off in effectiveness. They're still thinking like an empire, she said. They see us as a tactical problem to be solved. What are we, Captain? Vance smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. We're a strategic problem, and strategic problems don't get solved with tactics. She opened a channel to the entire ship. All hands, this is the captain. We have multiple enemy vessels approaching. They outmass us significantly, and they're attempting to engage us on their terms. We're going to show them why that's a bad idea. Engineering, prepare for emergency thrust burst. Gunnery, target their command vessel and hold fire until I give the word. Helm, set an intercept course and prepare for evasive maneuvers. The bridge crew responded with the efficiency of a well-drilled team. Within seconds, the Odyssey was moving, its engines flaring to life as it accelerated toward the Cathar fleet. Aboard the Cathar flagship Dominion, Thrax watched the human vessel approach. With a mixture of satisfaction and wariness, the humans were doing exactly what he had predicted. They were charging directly into the kill zone, trying to close the distance to their preferred engagement range. All vessels, he ordered, fire at will. Maintain distance. Do not let them close. The three combat cruisers opened fire, their energy cannons lighting the void with beams that would have burned through conventional shielding. The human vessel twisted and turned, evading the worst of the fire, but it was not fast enough to avoid everything. Beams splashed across its hull, but the damage appeared minimal. Commander, their armor is absorbing our fire, the tactical officer reported. We're not penetrating. Continue firing, Thrax ordered. Saturation assault, overwhelm their heat dissipation capacity. The cruisers intensified their fire, sending volley after volley at the human vessel. The Odyssey shuddered under the assault, its hull beginning to glow with the heat of absorbed energy. Captain, the armor is reaching critical temperatures, Wu reported. We can't dissipate this much heat. Keep firing, Vance ordered. We're almost there. The Odyssey continued its charge, taking hits that would have destroyed any conventional ship. The engineering crew worked frantically, rerouting power from non-essential systems to the cooling units, keeping the ship intact through sheer determination. Captain, the command vessel is in weapons range. Target their bridge, Vance ordered. All guns fire. The Odyssey's kinetic cannons roared to life, throwing projectiles at the Dominion with devastating speed. The Cathan flagship's shields, designed for energy weapons, buckled and collapsed under the first volley. The Second volley tore through the hull, striking the bridge and killing everyone. Inside, Thrax opened his eyes to find himself on the floor of the command deck. Around him, his officers were dead or dying, their bodies torn apart by the kinetic impact that had ripped through the hull. The air was thin, cold, filled with the taste of copper and the smell of burning electronics. He struggled to his feet, his body screaming with pain. His leg was broken, and he could feel blood seeping from wounds in his side. But he was alive. The K-Thorn had evolved to survive extreme environments, and his body was doing everything it could to keep him conscious. Status, he rasped. A young officer, barely more than a hatchling, stumbled toward him. Commander, the bridge is destroyed. Primary systems are offline. We have backup power to life support and limited navigation. The battle. The officer's face was pale, his scales drained of color. The humans, they've stopped firing, they're hailing us. Thrax limped to the communications console and activated the receiver. The human captain's voice filled the shattered command deck. K-Thorn flagship, this is Captain Vance. Your bridge is destroyed. Your command staff is dead. Your remaining ships are powerless to stop us. We can end this war here and now, or we can let you leave with a message. Thrax closed his eyes and took a deep breath. What message? Tell your empire that humanity does not want war, but if war is what you offer, we will accept it and we will win. Thrax opened his eyes. The human vessel hung in space, its hull scarred but intact, its crew alive and ready for more. He realized in that moment that he had underestimated them, not just their technology but their will. They were not fighting like a species, defending its territory. They were fighting like a species that had been fighting its entire existence. Your terms are accepted, he said. We will withdraw. The Odyssey towed the crippled K-Thorn flagship at a fraction of the speed of light, moving toward the neutral zone that had been hastily established as the boundary between human and K-Thorn space. 4 days had passed since the battle, and Captain Vance had used every moment to study her prisoners and their technology. Captain, the K-Thorn commander is requesting permission to speak with you. He says it's urgent. Vance looked up from the tactical analysis. The K-Thorn had been cooperative, almost too cooperative. They had provided detailed information about their fleet structure, their political hierarchy, and their military doctrine. But something about the ease of the cooperation made her uneasy. Bring him to the bridge, she ordered, but keep him under guard. 20 minutes later, Fleet Commander Thrax was escorted onto the bridge of the Odyssey. He moved with difficulty, his broken leg held in a primitive brace that his crew had improvised, but his eyes were sharp, and they took in every detail of the human vessel with the precision of a trained intelligence officer. Captain Vance, he said, I apologize for the intrusion, but I felt it was necessary to speak with you directly. Vance studied the alien. He was taller than she had expected, his body covered in scales that shimmered with iridescent colors. His face was a complex arrangement of mandibles and sensory organs, but his eyes were unmistakably intelligent. Speak, she said. Thrax nodded slowly. The information I provided about our fleet was accurate, but it was not complete. I withheld certain facts because I wanted to see how you would respond. To what end? Thrax's mandibles clicked once, to understand what kind of species you are, and what kind of war we're facing. Vance felt a chill run down her spine. Explain. The Cathar Empire is vast, Thrax said. We control 1,000 worlds an hour. Military is the most powerful in this region of the galaxy, but we have never faced a species like yours. You are unpredictable, your tactics are unorthodox, your technology, while primitive in some ways, is more effective than ours in combat. I'm aware of our capabilities. No, Thrax said, you are not, because you have not faced the full might of the Empire. The vessels you have encountered are patrol ships and light cruisers. The full power of the Cathar military includes dreadnoughts, carrier groups, and weapons that can destroy planets. If the High Council decides to fight this war, they will do so with everything they have. Vance absorbed this information, and you want to prevent that. Thrax's eyes narrowed. I want to prevent your extinction, not out of compassion, but because I have seen what your species is capable of. You are resilient, adaptive, and violent. If we go to war, we will win, but the cost will be catastrophic. Tens of billions dead, our economy in ruins, our empire destabilized for centuries. You will make us pay for every world we take. And if you win, we'll be dead. That doesn't sound like a great outcome for us. It depends on what you value, Thrax said. If you value survival above all else, you will negotiate. If you value honor and independence above all else, you will fight. I need to know which of those is more important to you. Vance looked at the alien commander. She saw intelligence there, and determination, and something else, something that might have been fear. We don't want war, she said, but we won't bow to anyone. If you want peace, offer us something we can accept. If you want war, we'll give you one that you'll never forget. Thrax nodded slowly. That is the answer I expected, and it is the answer I will take back to my people. Your people? I thought you were a prisoner. Thrax smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. You are right to be suspicious, Captain. I have been cooperative because I wanted to learn about you, and I have learned enough to know that you are not the enemy. The real enemy is within my own government. Politicians who see this as an opportunity for expansion. I am going to stop them. By yourself. With your help, Thrax said. There is a faction within the Cathar government that has been preparing for war with a new species for centuries. They have stockpiled weapons, trained soldiers, and accumulated resources for an offensive that would make the conquest of your world inevitable. They must be stopped, and I believe you are the only ones who can help me do it. Vance considered the offer. It could be a trap, but something in Thrax's voice told her it was genuine. What do you need? She asked. Access to your ship's communications array, Thrax said. I need to send a message to my supporters within the military. If I can convince them to support me, we can stop this war before it starts. The communications array of the Odyssey hummed with power as Thrax sent his message to 100 different recipients across Cathar space. It was a risky gambit, and he knew it. If the High Council intercepted the transmission, they would know he had betrayed them. But he was willing to take the risk. Are you sure about this? Vance asked, standing beside him at the communication station. No, Thrax admitted, but I am certain. Of one thing, we cannot afford this war. Your species is too dangerous. If we fight, we will win, but the costs will be unacceptable. My people will remember this war for generations. They will remember the bloodshed, the destruction, the loss, and they will blame my government for starting it. The politicians don't care about that. No, they don't, Thrax agreed, but the soldiers do. The military leadership has seen what your species can do. They respect you, and more importantly, they fear you. That is the currency I am counting on. Vance nodded. What happens if your message is intercepted? Thrax's mandibles clicked once. Then we fight, and we hope that we fight well enough to make them reconsider. The message reached the Cathan military within hours. The response was immediate. Supporters of Thrax's faction began to position their forces, preparing for a confrontation with the High Council's loyalists. The Empire was on the brink of civil war. Aboard the Odyssey, Vance watched the situation unfold on her tactical display. The Cathan military was mobilizing, splitting into two factions. One side supported Thrax and his call for peace. The other side was determined to continue the war. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Cathan fleet. They're demanding our surrender. Vance looked at the display. The Loyalist forces were vast, hundreds of ships massing for an offensive that would overwhelm everything in their path. Thrax, she called, your friends need to move faster. They are, Thrax replied, but the Loyalists have the advantage. Their fleet is larger, more disciplined. It will take time for my supporters to organize. Time we don't have. Vance made a decision. Helm set course. For the Loyalist fleet, maximum speed. Weapons, target the lead vessel and prepare for a full volley. We're going to make them pay for every inch of ground they take. The Odyssey accelerated toward the Cathar fleet. Its crew braced for the coming engagement. It was a desperate move, one that could end in their destruction, but it was the only move they had. The battle was brief and brutal. The Odyssey charged into the Loyalist fleet, its kinetic cannons firing at point-blank range. The Loyalist ships, not expecting such an aggressive move, struggled to respond. The Odyssey tore through their formation, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. But the odds were against them. Ship after ship, the Loyalist fleet closed in, their weapons firing with increasing accuracy. The Odyssey shuddered under the assault, its hull beginning to fail, its systems flickering with damage. Captain, we can't keep this up, Wu reported. We're taking too much damage. The armor is failing. We need to withdraw. Vance looked at the display. The Loyalist fleet was still intact. They had not done enough damage to turn the tide of the battle. Thrax, she called, where are your supporters? The Cathar commander was silent for a moment, then his voice came through the communications channel. They're here. Vance looked at the display. New ships were appearing on the tactical screen, hundreds of them pouring in from every direction. They were Cathan ships, but their markings were different. They were Thrax's ships. The Loyalist fleet hesitated. The sudden appearance of a massive force flying the colors of the opposition was more than they had anticipated. The battle faltered, and then it stopped. This is Commander Thrax, he announced. Across all channels, the war with humanity is over. Lay down your arms and return to your bases. This conflict serves no one. The Loyalist fleet, outnumbered and outmaneuvered, began to withdraw. The Civil War was over before it had really begun. The Cathan Empire was in chaos. Thrax's faction had won the confrontation, but the cost was immense. Hundreds of ships had been destroyed. Thousands of lives lost. The High Council, once the most powerful political body in the galaxy, had been discredited and dissolved. A new government led by Thrax was trying to pick up the pieces. Aboard the Odyssey, Captain Vance watched the aftermath of the battle on the tactical display. The Loyalist fleet was withdrawing, their ships damaged and demoralized. War was over, at least for now. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Fleet Commander Thrax. He wants to thank you for your support. Vance nodded. Put him through. The image of Thrax appeared on the main display. The Cathan commander looked exhausted, his scales dull, his eyes heavy. Captain Vance, he said, I am grateful for your assistance. Without your intervention, the Loyalists would have overwhelmed my forces. You have my thanks. I'm not interested in your thanks, Vance replied. I'm interested in what happens next. What does this peace look like? Thrax was silent for a moment. I do not know. The Empire is fractured. My supporters are weary, and the Loyalists will not give up their ambitions easily. There will be more conflict, more bloodshed, but we have a chance. We have a chance to build something new, something that does not require the subjugation of other species. It's a chance, that's all, Vance said. I hope you use it. The next few months were a blur of diplomatic negotiations. The Cathan Empire and humanity, once enemies, became reluctant allies. Trade routes were established, treaties were signed, and the threat of war receded. But in the shadows, the Loyalist remnants were plotting. They had not given up on their ambition to conquer humanity. They were simply waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came when Thrax's government announced a new initiative, the establishment of a joint human Cathan military force to protect the border regions. The Loyalist remnants saw this as the final betrayal. They began to plan their attack. The attack came on a dark night when the joint forces were at their weakest. The Loyalist remnants launched a coordinated assault on the border outposts, overwhelming the defenses with sheer numbers. The battle was intense, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Captain Vance, now commander of the joint forces, knew they were outmatched. The Loyalists had prepared for this moment, stockpiling weapons and resources for years, but she had prepared for it too. She had trained her crews, upgraded her ships, and forged alliances with species that the Cathan had once conquered. Captain, we're receiving a message from the Loyalist commander. He's demanding our surrender. Vance smiled. Put him through. The Loyalist commander's face appeared on the display. He was older than Thrax, his scales scarred with the marks of a long and brutal career. Human, he said, your empire is defeated. Your allies are scattered. Surrender now, and I will spare your crew. Vance shook her head. You've made a mistake. What mistake? You thought we were fighting to defend our territory, she said, but we're fighting for something else. We're fighting for the future, and we will not let you take it from us. The Loyalist commander laughed. Heroics won't save you, human. My fleet outnumbers yours 10 to 1. You are beaten. Maybe, Vance admitted, but we're not the only ones fighting. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All vessels, this is Captain Vance. The Loyalists thought they could defeat us with numbers. They were wrong. Because we have allies, and our allies are very, very angry. The channel opened and a new voice joined the conversation. It was a Zyloni representative, one of the species they Kathan had conquered centuries ago. Captain Vance, the Zyloni fleet is ready to join the battle. We have waited a long time for this moment. Another voice joined the channel, a species that had been enslaved by the Kathan for generations. The Aries are with you, Captain. We will not be slaves again. More voices joined, one after another. The Loyalist commander's face went pale. What is this? He demanded. What have you done? Vance smiled again. I've done what you should have done. I've given your enemies a reason to fight, and believe me, they've been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The battle was over in less than an hour. The Loyalist remnants caught between the joint human Cathorn forces and the allied species had no chance. They surrendered en masse, their crews tired and demoralized. The Loyalist commander, a veteran named Tarn, was brought before Captain Vance. In the aftermath of the battle, he was bound and guarded, his eyes filled with defiance. Human, he spat, you have won, but this is not the end. The Empire will rise again. We will destroy you and everyone you love. Vance looked at him calmly. You're wrong. This is the end, not because we defeated you, but because we showed your people something they had forgotten. What? Vance gestured to the display. Hope. Your empire gave your people security, but it also gave them fear. They were afraid of you. They were afraid of the High Council. They were afraid of a future without conquest. We showed them a different future, a future where they could be free, secure, and respected without having to oppress others. Tarn laughed bitterly. You think your victory is permanent. You think your allies will stay loyal. They are weak. They will betray you. They always do. No, Vance said, they won't, because they know what happens when they work together. They've seen it happen, and they won't forget. Thrax arrived at the command center. Moments later, he looked at Tarn with an expression that was half pity, half contempt. Tarn, he said, I am sorry it has come to this. You were a loyal soldier. You believed in the Empire, but you were wrong. The Empire was built on a lie. That strength comes from domination. It doesn't. Strength comes from cooperation, from building something together. Tarn shook his head. You are weak. Thrax, you always have been. You let these primitives convince you that their way was better, and now you have doomed your people. No, Thrax said, I have saved them. He turned to leave, but Tarn called out to him, wait. There is something you should know. The High Council, they were not the only ones planning this war. There are others, factions within your own government who believe the same thing I do. They will not stop. They will never stop. Thrax paused. I know, but I will be ready for them. In the quiet of the command center, after Tarn had been taken away, Thrax turned to Vance. You have given my people a gift, he said, a chance to build something new. I will not waste it. Vance nodded. I'm glad. There is one more thing, Thrax said. War you won today, it was not the first war humanity has won. I have studied Your history, your species has fought many wars. You have been conquerors, slaves, oppressors, and victims. You have seen every side of the conflict, and yet you found a way to build something better. Vance nodded. We did. It wasn't easy. No, Thrax agreed. It was not easy, but it was worth it, and that is the lesson my people need to learn. In the years that followed the war, the Catharn Empire transformed itself into something new. The conquest stopped. Subject species were given their freedom. The empire became a confederation, a union of species, working together for mutual benefit. And at the center of it all was Captain Mara Vance. She had become a legend, not just in human space but across the galaxy. Her story was told on 1,000 worlds in 1,000 languages. She was the human who had stopped a war, saved an empire, and inspired a revolution. But Vance herself never saw it that way. I was just doing my job, she said to the reporters who surrounded her. I was protecting my crew, that's all. The reporters didn't believe her. They could see the weight of the decisions she had made, the burden of the lives she had lost. They could see that she was more than just a soldier. She was a symbol. The Catharn Confederation thrived. The allied species, once enemies, now work together to build a better future. Wars of conquest were over, replaced by a new era of cooperation and respect. And at the center of it all was a single truth: that humanity was not weak. Humanity was dangerous, not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their indomitable spirit. The Catharn Empire had learned that lesson the hard way, and they had been forever changed by it. Captain Vance stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, watching the sun set over a distant world. The planet below was one of the former Catharn colonies, now a free world, a member of the Confederation. Captain, we're receiving a message from the Catharn High Council. They want to thank you for your service. Vance smiled. Tell them I'm honored. The communications officer paused. There's more. They want to make you an honorary member of the council. They want you to help shape the future of the Confederation. Vance was silent for a moment, then she nodded. Tell them I accept. The bridge erupted in applause. Vance's crew, the men and women who had fought beside her, cheered. They had accomplished something impossible. They had changed the course of history. Vance raised a hand for silence. Enough, we still have work to do. We have a future to build, and we need to make sure that the mistakes of the past are never repeated. The crew nodded. They understood. They had seen what war did. They had seen what fear did, and they had seen what hope could do. The Odyssey began its descent toward the planet below, carrying with it the hopes of a new future, and behind it the stars sparkled in the fading light, a reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The story of humanity was not over. It was just beginning, and it would be a story of courage, sacrifice, and hope. The Catharn Empire had thought humans were weak. They had learned the truth. Humanity was the species that refused to give up, the species that refused to surrender, the species that refused to be conquered. And that was the greatest weapon of all.